Welcome to the ElevUSA. This is a story of the haunted doll. It all started when Sarah moved into an old Victorian house in a quiet town. The house had been abandoned for years, and despite its eerie atmosphere, she found it charming. A freelance writer, Sarah loved solitude, and this house provided the perfect escape from city noise. However, there was something unsettling about the house. The air felt heavy, as if someone or something was always watching. Strange noises echoed in the night, doors creaked even when shut, and a chilling wind blew through the halls even when the windows were closed. But Sarah dismissed these as the quirks of an old house. One evening, while unpacking boxes in the attic, she stumbled upon an old wooden chest covered in dust. Inside, she found a porcelain doll dressed in an elegant faded blue dress. Its glassy eyes stared ahead, its lips curled into a faint, unsettling smile. Though eerie, Sarah thought it was beautiful and placed it on a shelf in her bedroom. That was her first mistake. The first signs. That night, Sarah felt uneasy. She woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of faint giggles. It sounded like a child laughing, but she lived alone. Heart pounding, she turned on her bedside lamp and scanned the room. Nothing. The next morning, she brushed it off as a dream. But as she walked past the doll, she had the strange feeling that its head had turned slightly. She chalked it up to her imagination and went on with her day. Days passed, and the strange occurrences escalated. The giggles became whispers. Objects in her home moved on their own. One evening, she left her keys on the kitchen counter, only to find them inside the fridge an hour later. Lights flickered at random, and the temperature in the house dropped suddenly, even though the heater was on. One night, as she sat at her desk writing, she heard the unmistakable sound of small footsteps running down the hallway. She rushed to check, but the corridor was empty, except for the doll, which now lay on its side in the middle of the hallway. A chill ran down her spine. She had left the doll in her bedroom. A dark history. Determined to find answers, Sarah visited the town's local archives. She found an old newspaper article about the house's previous owner, Margaret Holloway, a woman rumored to be a recluse. The article mentioned that Margaret had a daughter, Lillian, who had died tragically at the age of 7. Neighbors claimed that Margaret had refused to accept her daughter's death and had continued setting the dinner table for her, talking to her, and even dressing a doll that looked just like Lillian. Some believed that Margaret's obsession with the doll had invited something dark into the house. Sarah's hands trembled as she read the last line of the article. After Margaret's mysterious death, the doll was never found. Some say it still carries Lillian's spirit. Realization hit Sarah like a thunderbolt. The doll she had found, it was Lillian's. The haunting intensifies. That night, Sarah locked the doll inside a cupboard. She didn't care if it was ridiculous. She just wanted to feel safe, but safety was an illusion. At exactly 3 a.m., she was jolted awake by the sound of something scratching against wood. It was coming from the cupboard. The scratching turned into violent banging. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She grabbed her phone, turned on the flashlight, and slowly approached the cupboard. As soon as she touched the handle, the noise stopped. Summoning every ounce of courage, she yanked the door open, only to find the cupboard empty. The doll was now sitting on her bed. Terror gripped her. She grabbed the doll and threw it outside into the cold, stormy night. She slammed the door shut, her heart racing. She barely slept, fearing the sound of tiny footsteps returning. A terrifying encounter. The next morning, she stepped outside and expecting to find the doll on the ground where she had thrown it. It was gone. Sarah felt a deep unease settle in her chest. She tried to convince herself that the wind had carried it away, but the relief didn't last long. That evening, as she entered her bedroom, her blood ran cold. The doll was sitting on her pillow, its head tilted, staring directly at her. She couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed her car keys, wrapped the doll in a cloth, and drove to the outskirts of town. She dug a hole beneath an old oak tree and buried the doll deep in the earth. That night, she finally slept peacefully. The final horror. A week passed, and Sarah slowly regained her sense of normalcy. The house was quiet again. No whispers, no footsteps, no moving objects. She started to believe that whatever spirit had been attached to the doll was finally at rest. One evening, as she prepared for bed, she glanced at her bookshelf. A chill spread through her body. Sitting there, in the exact same spot where she had first placed it, was the doll. Its dress was still covered in dirt. Its glassy eyes were still staring. And this time, it was smiling wider. Sarah barely had time to scream before the bedroom door slammed shut on its own. Conclusion: Sarah was never seen again. Some say she ran away, unable to bear the horrors of the house. Others believe something far worse happened. Months later, a new family moved into the house. In the attic, the youngest daughter found an old, beautiful doll dressed in blue. She picked it up, smiling, completely unaware of the horrors tied to it. And so, the cycle began again. The doll was never meant to be abandoned. It always found its way back home.